Can you beat Lufia with items only? Well, not you, you're shit, but I can. Look, watch. This'll be my first item run where I have minimal knowledge of the title going in. All I know is that there are damaging items, so let the bumbling begin. We open with guys well into their 70s, at levels that is, they're all strapping young heroes in a tower of darkness about to tackle the ultimate evil. That's right, Lufia starts at the end of someone else's game. It's crazy. We ascend a few floors and engage in battle against 4 extremely powerful foes. I check my inventory before we skirm on to find that I'm rocking about 60 usable damaging items, but after throwing about 20 or so at the first of the 4 bosses, I quickly realised that we're not going to have enough to take these fiends down. While it's neat that we're immediately gifted damaging items, their lack of utility against foes who are likely similar to the actual final boss is a little bit concerning. Luckily, this is the tutorial, and I never count that. This isn't even our protagonist, it's just some guys. A 90-year time skip occurs, and we're introduced to our protagonist, 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮𝓮, and his childhood pal, the titular, Lufia. 9 more years are skipped, and everyone's talking about how great it is that they live in a time of peace with no monsters around, and then some monsters appear, so now we're off to investigate. Lufia runs off somewhere after forcing the protagonist to sniff her rosebud, but 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 is smart and stocks up on some resources before he follows. Starting with a modest pocket of 100 gold, we head to the store to find that they sell arrow for 2 gold. This is an item that when thrown in battle causes damage. We're in good territory because we start with 50 of them. Testing it out on enemies, it does around 20 damage, and doing a quick melee test, we do just shy of 10, so these are pretty powerful for how cheap they are. I pilfer the town, finding a potion which increases my max health by a few points, gear up and acquire a 99 stack of arrows. Now, our adventure begins. I'm finding that the 3 enemies in the starting zone can be one-shot, but none of them yield 2 gold, so we're operating at a loss, which forces me to loot scraps where I can. While pilfering an early cave, I snag 200 gold from a chest, which is 100 more arrows, but I also come up against the first random foe that can't be dispatched on a single arrow alone. The spider. A high roll drops him, but that's rare, so we're off to a worrying start. The encounter rate is also insane, but combat's pretty snappy, so it kinda balances out. Exiting the cave, we arrive at a castle which I pilfer and am told that some evil guys killed everyone and that they're all still here, but I can't see them. So they're not real. Before returning, I head west a little more to just outside another town to find a creature called Nettle. This guy can be felled in a good damage roll or 2 bad ones and drops 8 gold, so fighting only him, that's a guaranteed 4 gold profit and a potential 6. A few other enemies help generate revenue, but only if we hit good rolls, so the Nettles alone have secured our early game run. I also found a mid arrow in the castle, and testing this, it does a decent chunk of damage. My test gave me a range of about 54 to 62, and heading on through the next town, we can buy arrows, not to be confused with arrow, the item I've been using thus far. Arrows with an S are arrow without an S, but it hits every enemy in a group. This might seem handy, but enemies only come in packs of 2 up to this point, and they cost 10 gold, while an arrow without an S only costs 2. Unfortunately, unless I come into severe wealth, I will likely be ignoring these. I also gear up 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 to almost double his attack to see if it had any sway on usable item damage, and as far as I can see, it doesn't. My rolls seem to more or less settle in the mid-teens damage-wise, regardless of what my attack was. Well, it's going to save me a lot of money on new weapons. Let's make some progress. Heading back home, Lufia is over her hissy fit, and we're good pals again, so she joins the party. Ha! Women. As I said I'd be ignoring arrows, I've been immediately humbled. Lufia is a mage, physically quite pathetic, and starts at level 1. This is an issue due to a few compounding factors, primarily the maximum enemy count in battle now seems to be 4, and like many other JRPGs, you don't target an enemy specifically, you target their group. If I have a group of, say, 4 spiders who take 2 low rolls, I can't specifically target an individual spider. I've got to hit the group and hope the game picks that same spider twice in a row, or I'm going to cop a ton of damage. Another compounding factor is that if I select a group with 2 attacks and then the group dies to my first attack, the second is wasted, and it costs me an arrow for no damage. To top that all off, my Lufia costs a whopping 40 gold to revive, which is 20 arrows without an S. The game just changed in a big way, but to consistently rely on arrows with an S, I'm going to need a more reliable farming method, which grants me enough gold to output in perpetuity. Well, the short-term goal is to grind Lufia up a little bit and pray she never falls again, or we're probably rooted. Heading back to a kingdom under attack, we rescue a king and some maid girl chilling out in the totally not sex dungeon, and upon leaving are attacked by Gades. Gades? Who absolutely rolls this? I got about 10 turns in a row, so I just use them to defend, and he removes my asshole from my body, hits about 10 times my health value. And then Lufia asks him to leave, and he does. We probably should have tried that before pulling out the sword. Then we're teleported back to the starting town for one final time. Probably. I perform a little bit more grinding before dropping the mate off in a nearby town, and we're back to adventuring. There we go, now Lufia can take 2 hits. In a cave north of the next town, you can occasionally find an enemy called Kobold who drop a mid-arrow, and every time I've fought one, I've received it as a drop, so for now I'm gonna say it's a huge drop rate, like at least 100%. There is some decent enemy HP variance going on, as my first group of Kobolds fell to 15 damage, while the following group didn't. I'd noticed it with enemies prior, but now it's confirmed. I can't imagine this impacts bosses, but again, I am flying blind. I unequip both characters' weapons and sell them for a pittance, plus a few revive items, which gives me enough to kit them out with the best armor for survivability. I simply cannot take another revive fee. It's like 20 gold per level, and now we're nearing level 7. Not unlike reality, it's just too expensive to die. I've also discovered that arrows with an S are selectively useful, as the increased cost can sometimes save me money. If I come up against 4 slimes, for example, they'll all die to a single cast, which may technically cost me 2 extra gold, but the money and time I save in not having to heal or return to town more than makes up for it. Continuing on, we meet a crazy old bloke who directs us to another crazy old bloke, but this second one dies and tells us to go to the next town. For some reason, he had a grave outside of his house before he died and then was buried under it. That's weird, I guess they haven't figured out terrain flags yet. Examining the grave grants us a short sword, a trinket of remembrance. We'll treasure it always. On our way back through East Cave, a slime drops an opal, which is a ring that does nothing, but we can sell it for 50 gold. I'm still felling foes in 1 or 2 hits, but due to HP and damage variance, the occasional enemy requires 3. With arrows, no S costing 2 gold, we're not really hurting for output and are cruising. It's probably a good time to mention that item stacks cap at 99, but you can seemingly have endless, and using them from the highest slot in your inventory pulls the quantity from a stack further down the list. It is a very nice system. There's another cave north of town, so I take a quick spelunk, only to find a daze ring, which increases my defense by a little bit, which is always appreciated. Yeah, plus if I'm ever hard up for cash, I can pawn it. Returning to the town and speaking to the only character in the game with green hair, it's revealed that he's a captain of an army or something, and then we're attacked by the first proper boss of the game. The captain joins our party as if there were any doubt, and our casts are off. We're doing anywhere from 4 to 10 damage. The damage drop is in, and it's brutal. Each of these fellas seem to go down fairly quickly despite their best attempts at healing. I used a few arrows with an S, but the thought of using a mid arrow never even crossed my mind as there was no struggle at all. I spent maybe 60 to 70 gold on this fight and made 420 off it. Thank you goblins, very cool. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻, our new best friend, comes with a short sword, so we take that for coin and get everyone geared up with a bit of extra defense, then absolutely stack our inventory. Even with single-digit damage, we're coming for those late-game bosses through sheer force of will. The current beat sees our heroes in need of a ship, and Mosshead 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮𝓭's vessel was just sunk by the bad guys. Despite us fighting them on land, their ship vanished too. Must have just been a drop-off. One NPC mentions they stole a docked boat and headed north, which means we're going back through North Cave. Approaching the ship, we're ambushed by 3 actual goblins, and they completely destroy us. I opened by cautiously using arrows with an S to hit all of them for around 10, but once I saw them doing 15 back to me, I started spamming them. Unfortunately, after about 4 turns, it was a hot game over. Game overs halve your gold and spawn you in the last town with only like 1 character alive and the others dead. And that's too expensive, so I just reload my save. I'm thinking I might have to use some mid arrows for this. Luckily I have 8 just from my casual kobold encounters. A mid arrow cast by each of the party members hits 1 goblin each, and they're down by 60 health instantly, which is enough of their health to cruise through the rest of the fight. Once one goes down, they stop being threatening, and we win. We're promptly escorted to the next town over and can freely return as we wish. Not that we would, as the store stock is plentiful on this side. We can purchase arrows with and without an S, as well as a few new items. For starters, we have bomb for 100 gold, as well as stuffed bear, dog, and pig. We've had a stuffed bear in our inventory for a while, and that confuses enemies, where dog paralyzes one foe and pig puts them to sleep. I buy a bomb to do a little testy, and this attack hits all enemies regardless of group, and seems to do around mid-30s damage-wise. That might seem like a lot of money for how low the damage is, and you're right, when you can get more or less the same effect from 2 or 3 arrows with an S, which would be 20 or 30 gold. Scouting the enemies on this side, kobolds seem to appear more and in larger numbers, and most enemies still die in 2 or 3 arrows without an S. But then there's a 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻, a kind of chicken dragon, possibly a basilisk, who takes a couple hits and drops 100 gold. I use this as an opportunity to amass a small fortune and gear my boys up with the highest possible defense we can get. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 leaves, but then comes back because the army wouldn't help him fight the big bad evil dude, so now we're ride or die, we're a kiss short of a ring, and then we waddle down to the next town to scope out the helpings. This item store sells buffs. That's right, usable buffs, so let's test them out and see if we can get a damage bump for those arrows without an S. Unfortunately, neither the attack nor intelligence buffs seem to do anything, but we can buff our own magic resistance, so I guess that's something. If times get desperate, I'll try the buffs on other items such as bombs, but for now, they seem to be useless. There's a 50 gold entrance fee to access the man we're after, which kinda sucks, but the boons that come from that minor fee are immense as we're tasked with treasure hunting. And despite what the NPCs say about the caves being barren, 2 trips in rockets me to nearly 10,000 gold, which, for perspective, is 100 bombs or 5,000 arrows without an S. Lufia contains many things that I won't need for this run, such as rings that increase the damage of specific magic elements, any weapon or attack boosting items, and MP heals, and all of them sell for a lot. High magic sell for 500 gold, and this dungeon hands them out like year-old newspapers, not to mention that the following dungeon, this towery spire, has robed mages who can drop them. A potential 500 gold yield per battle plus the 100 they're guaranteed to drop is insane. I thought this run would be tough, but look at us, we're defying economic realities. The boy atop this structure tells us he knows of our next destination. We've got to find the elf guy who escaped from the tower at the beginning of the game, but he'll only cough it up if we fight him. I didn't expect a boss here, no less one where 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 fights alone, so I kinda panic spammed most of my mid arrows as they're still doing about 50 damage. This far surpassed his pathetic attempts at healing, and we walk away, another battle closer to victory. Checking behind his bedroom, there are 2 chests, each containing a mid arrow. Are items a novelty run, or is this the intended path? I'm getting mixed signals. Anyway, he told us to go through a desert to the south, so let's plod. The enemies here were all present in the tower, so there's not much new. Even in this first town, the item store's closed, and all we get is a sprinkle of dialogue about a sick kid, and then we chase another one who wants to find a cure. Following him eastward to a kingdom, we check the item store, and there's no items again. Huh. And then we check the weapon store, and they sell mid arrows. This is huge! I grab a couple hundred, then stock my armor as every point of defense counts, and we're off to the castle. I royally screwed up here, as there's a repeatable event where Lufia will throw a coin into the fountain, and it takes 1 gold from you. I wanted to see if it would honor a broke-ass man with no gold, or if it would ignore that you were poor and potentially underflow to the maximum value, but unfortunately I moved the story too far along and blocked the space with a princess. Naturally, I reloaded a very old save, and running all the way back to test it, Lufia just chastises you for being poor. Cool, that was totally worth the 3-hour trek I made. Anyway, I forgot to go back to that spire tower before, as I don't think I explored it fully, so I quickly skim it and grab a sonic ring. Giving this to 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 allows me to give my daze ring to 𝓹𝓲𝓵, which bumps his defense and magic resistance a little bit, and he needs that magic resist bump. He is a magic bitch. Heading to the next dungeon, there's a severe escalation in enemy strength. They're popping off spells, barely taking any damage from my items, and some are almost entirely immune to non-magic, which items unfortunately are. I'm getting my shit pushed in, but we're chugging along very slowly and clearing out the chests, looking for trinkets and baubles. I find a monster ring, which increases the encounter rate, and a ghost ring, which increases damage to ghosts, but it doesn't work with items. I tested it, so they're both getting sold. I nail the critical path first try, and we fight a boss. It turns out the girl was ill due to being possessed by a ghost demon, so we spam him with mid arrows and he falls quickly. His spells were almost an issue, but we scooted on by, and then the kids end up safe and the princess holds a speech about not relying on a trinket even though it propped up their entire economy. Yeah, good luck with that. Next stop, we're gonna capture an elf and sneak into Elf Town. Arriving in not Elf Town, I check the store to find that high arrows are now for sale. These are mid arrows but hit 1 group, so extremely powerful, but they do cost the same as a bomb, 100 gold. It's interesting how they've put so much attention into these items. They've balanced them all in a way to make them all viable, selectively. Bombs might hit all enemies, but they do around half the damage of a high arrow, so that added utility has an offset. Also, the pricing and whatever. I talk to a copy-pasted blonde girl who tells us she handed an elf over to the peace officers and that we need to rescue her and that she's behind a wooden door, so we need a key from her brother. We head to a cave, strip it bare, grab the key, go to another cave, open the door and do some more stripping. Then we arrive at the temple, in which 2 guards forbid us from entering. I can see the elf, she's right there. Give the elf to me. So I explore northward to another spire, which I guess is our next destination. I enter for a bit but get absolutely smoked by a bunch of ambush encounters, so we bail. The reason I'm getting my ass beat is because I'm frugal by design. Yes, it's true, I kvetch at the thought of spamming mid arrows as it cost me a fortune, and with every attack costing me 50 gold and enemies barely yielding anything here, I'm practically paying for progress. You know, a state all too familiar to video games. I fear that by going too hard, I'll end up penniless and be required to grind lower level enemies for a long time. But by not going hard enough, I'm not going to have the stats to survive the turns to get my items off, and having never played Lufia, I don't know what the future holds. If I find 4 of anything, Sandmans or Ogres, it costs me 200 gold to kill them, and they mostly yield more than 200 back, so we've got a grind spot near the spire. Ascending the tower, I make sure to avoid the archer foe, as they can use items too, and I hate that, that's my thing. There's a slight chance they'll use a high arrow, and like 3 of those wipes the party. I arrive at the top, and there's nothing here. Excuse me? Heading back to the shrine with the elf girl, I walk to the side of it, and I start the next story event. I don't know why I didn't try that earlier. There's a free heal and save here, so we take it and try to leave, then a flying monster kidnaps the elf girl. Gee, I wonder where he's going. We engage in battle, and our mid arrows do less than 10 damage. Oh god. I knew the wall was coming, I just didn't think it'd be this soon. So what are our options? Can we kill him 8 damage at a time? Unfortunately, I don't think so. His attacks do too much, and survival is just not happening. I head east from our last safe haven and stumble upon a desert town. The item store here has big arrows, but they cost 100 gold each. I'm gonna buy a ton of these, but I need more money, so I guess it's grind time. What does grinding look like? Well, I've got a lot of old stock. None of it does damage to modern enemies, and it doesn't sell for a lot, but I can turn it into infinitely more money by grinding earlier monsters. I teleport back to 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, then head to the spire with the red mages inside that drop high magic, selling for 500 gold each. It'd be silly to bank my entire effort on drops, even if the rate is fairly high, but you can encounter bunnies and 𝓸𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓮 here, both of which drop 100 gold and barely have any health. The high magics are just the icing on the cake. I'll keep going till my low level items are expended and reassess after. Finishing up, we have 17,000 gold. I might have overdone it a tiny bit. Anyway, I stock up and head back to the spire, where the boss awaits. I cast a big arrow and it does nearly 100 damage, which is insane. This battle's free. Until it's not. His ice magic hits everyone for mid-20s, which is too spread out to effectively heal, and when he gets low health, he starts raining bolts from the sky like fucking Zeus. They hit a whopping 40 to 50 damage, and our health is barely higher than that. He leaves 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 and Lufia on critical health, then we queue up a few more attacks, 𝓸𝓲𝓵 falls, and our items finish him off. Damn, I wasn't expecting that last minute ass blasting, but then does anyone? We say goodbye to the elf child and head off on the rest of our adventure. Arriving to a house on the outskirts of a forest, we're jump scared by the same elf and begrudgingly take her along so we can navigate the secret forest that no one's ever navigated, even though there's an old bloke living on the other side. Lufia gets extremely jealous and petulant, implicitly accusing 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 of pedophilia. Damn, girl, that's evil. We'd never mess around with a child. You see, she's actually 1,000 years old in elf years. Anyway, we get our 4th party member, which is 1 extra arrow chuck per turn, and another sponge to absorb damage. Unfortunately, Jeren, the half-elf child, has no magic defense. Maybe I don't know fantasy all too well, but I would assume that an elven character would have high magic defense. Oh well, we head to the next town where citizens inform us that we've got to explore 3 towers of differing colours to get the gems which open the way to Elftropolis. The item store here has high potions which I could really use, but they're 400 gold each, and that's way too much. Heading to the blue tower, which I was explicitly told was the first one by practically every villager, the enemy difficulty ramps up pretty hard. We're still doing okay, we got a lot of potions, lots of arrows of the big and mid variety, but every battle feels like life or death, and that's partly my fault as I don't want to overspend. We find a blue ring which increases defense, so we slap it on 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓮, grab the jade cocoon, and head to green tower. Inside there's a green ring in the left room, which goes on the elf girl with the old stinky blue ring for the blue girl, whatever. We head up, grab all the chests, then leave, because I think I need to put the blue gem in the blue tower first, but I don't have a blue gem. Admittedly, I got very lost here. During my aimless back and forthing, I'm finding that smoke bombs, a usable battle item which allows you to flee, as well as sweet waters which lower the encounter rate, are huge boons. The flee rate seems to be calculated by stats, possibly levels or agility, as I can run from weak enemies with no issue, but these tougher adversaries love me, they refuse to let me go. If I get ambushed or even hang around for 1 turn, that costs a lot of money, and smoke bombs are only 80 gold a pop, with sweet waters being 10, and they seem to last for a good 50 or so steps, possibly more, who's counting? I am going to be underleveled, but when my damage isn't beholden to stats, it's not going to be a huge issue. After grabbing a ruby from a mine, then heading up the red tower, it immediately becomes an issue, as this boss, the Dark Ghost, uses a water spell, hitting everyone for 50 damage per turn. I have an item which casts a magic resist buff, but that barely makes a difference, and this boss can only be hurt with big arrows, doing around 50. If I can keep everyone alive for a handful of turns casting their big arrows, I'm sure he'll go down. However, at the moment, I can barely survive 2 turns. I need more magic resist as I have no group heal and I can't afford high potions, so it's grind time again. From this tower, we picked up some decent scrap, a diamond ring which increases buy prices for items, but not sell prices, so it's pretty fucking useless. I pump up about 4 levels, clearing the next floor of the old mine, grabbing a few nifty items, most of which are alchemized into gold. But before I sell them, I grab a luck sword, which takes 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻𝓮 power from 40 to over 400. I use this to finally put the nail in the damage item formula coffin, and objectively confirm that it has no bearing on usable damaging items. It also cost me 1200 gold to unequip. I should have saved before trying it, I didn't know it was cursed. Anyway, now that we've got some epic stat increases, I've got a tiny bit of grinding left to do. There are sand roses which drop high potions at a rate of about 10%, and I'd like to capitalize on that opportunity. Luckily, they have a huge spawn rate over at this place, which also has a free heal, not that we really need it, we're pretty beefy now. I rock in and find that I didn't even need to grind, the high potions alone saved my ass as I'd alternate between big arrows and healing. He had a particular focus on draining my MP, which was great, and even with some unexpected extra water casts, my party was still fine, we rolled him quite easily. We're on to Elf Town, so we slot each of the baubles and are teleported to meet 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓮. He's blind and can't help us, but gives the elf girl his bow. Yeah, thanks. Then he informs us that we gotta find Maxim's sword, which is really gonna help. Wonder how much it sells for. Our next goal is heading to the sunken tower at the bottom of the sea, but before that, we gotta find some science nerd. We're given a key and instructed to head through a warp portal, and like 5 portals later, we arrive on the west bank of where we already were. This part of the world is quite barren, but they make up for it with tedious fetch quests. A quick run through a cave, and we need a bridge repaired, so we gotta find this guy's tools and his crew. There's a lot of back and forthing here, just peak retro JRPG. Then we arrive in another town with nothing of note, so we climb a tower where a guy tells us to bugger off. We take his purple ring, which is amazing, increases a broad range of stats. Hitting level 25, I go through the next level of Old Cave, and I'm now sitting on about 60,000 gold with a still full inventory. Heading back to the research facility, we talk to a bloke who offers us a potion to grow 2 extra arms, which would be great for item chucking, but our low IQ party turns him down. He gives us a tour of the seafloor, almost recreating a certain notorious implosion, but we surface and can use it as a regular old ship. And now I'm a bit intimidated, because I've been handed a gigantic open world. To make matters worse, there are sea-top encounters, and Lufia has an insane encounter rate, so over the size of a whole-ass world, we're in for a lot of fleeing. Performing a lot of blanket aimless exploration, I stumble into towns which sell X arrows, which are big arrows that hit a whole group, so between that and some snazzy new armor, which is immediately outpaced by another town I randomly stumbled into, I'm poor again, but I'm optimistic. Stumbling and bumbling some more, I enter an area way beyond my level, and they use my body however they see fit, but mostly as a punching bag. Continuing our endeavour, eventually we stumble upon an island, and I wish I could give you a vague direction or location, but not unlike my weekends at the club, I moved in random directions and docked. Anyway, this place sells arrows which cause paralysis, sleep, and instant death, so that's great, and they're cheap. They also sell dragon arrows, which seem to be big arrows but cost twice as much. Eventually, landing near a new research facility, we're sent on another escort mission back and forth. If I didn't know any better, I'd swear I was experiencing extreme narrative padding. We gotta find another bloke, but this bloke is on the 5th floor of Old Cave, so heading there, he takes us back to the facility, and we're told we have to climb the Light Tower. I've been here already, it was one of the many places I ended up on my Blind World tour, so I run straight to the top and die to the boss in record time. He has a spell called Blizzard, which does about 70 damage to everyone, and my big arrows do 20, which is no good. I wasn't too far from level 30, so I thought I'd pump through and grab those extra stats, as well as unlock the next floor of Old Cave. Just to make some more money, maybe uncover some neat items, and neat item, I did uncover. Spelunking through the 7th floor, I stumble upon a decent amount of money, which won't help much, but what will help is the wind flute. This is a reusable item which seemingly restores everyone's health for around 50, and that may not seem like a lot, but based on how turns work, it's huge. I now stand a fighting chance, even dealing 12 damage per turn. Turns rotate around based on agility, so depending on how long it takes for a character to act, another could seemingly move twice or even 3 times in that span. They're not hard set in stone, you don't queue them all up at once and watch them all execute, they're quite fluid. Due to this, reusable items can be used by every character on every single one of their turns, which means I can fully heal all my boys in an instant. With this item acquired, it's time to make some goddamn progress, and hopefully I'll never have to grind again. We arrive, and he's still waiting. Imagine going to a guy and being like, hey, wait here 1 sec, I'm gonna get a thing to kill ya, and then he's still there when you get back. That level of obligation could only appear in a Japanese game. This boss is actually easier than I first suspected, as half the time he'll debuff your physical defense or drain your MP, which doesn't matter as we're not using MP and he has no physical attacks. His most dangerous are Blizzard and Flame, which hit everybody, but they only seem to do around 40 to 60 damage, which is manageable after all those levels we acquired. The damage I'm outputting is also higher, but the variance is wacky. I can hit as low as 12 or as high as the mid-40s. With a perpetual flute tune to soothe our wounds, it takes an extremely long time, and we lose Jaren at one point, but eventually drop this dude. I must have used 100 big arrows, that's insane. Gades and Ammon return. They bully us a bit, but don't finish us off due to our plot armor. We're fine, then I head back to clean up my inventory and move past the light tower, onto darker pastures. Arriving in a sequential town, we're told that the guy we're after is in gay-ass cave. Bro, I don't want to go there. Wading through the muck, we find the guy, but haha, wait, it's the wrong guy, and he tells us that the guy we're looking for is in a different cave, so we go looking through that cave, but I ended up in the wrong one. I did get a lot of the items we need for the story mission, so I guess it's okay. Then I look around and there's a ship near a wider cave nearby, which I completely missed the first time around. I'm getting filtered by this Super Nintendo RPG. The events in the back half of Lufia suck. It's just redirecting the protagonist to a place which is functionally the same over and over. So, we enter that cave, fall down a hole, and find a guy who gives us our second last piece of whatever we're after, and informs us of the exact numbers in each cave. We're 1 short, so it turns out I have to go to this kingdom down a river, the king needs food, and then I go to Purple Newt Cave to get some purple newt. Then we need a flavor from a chef's city I glossed over way back, and now he gives us access to his stash, which contains the last thing we need. I skimmed pretty hard there, so some noteworthy mentions were an engage ring, which drops the price of all stores by 25%. And an NPC tells us that if we have 8 dragon orbs, we can go to a dragon shrine for a wish. At the time I had 7, which I thought was enough, but I found the 8th in this cave, so I guess that's where we're heading. Go, dragon orb. Gonna fucking kill myself. A decent minute or 2 later, I finally track him down, and he offers us 2 level ups, 3 of all the stat increasing potions for each character, a might shield, or a might bow. I don't want the bow, I can level myself, and as my stats go up as I level, the answer is clear. Give me the might shield. Slapping this thing on item, I gain a significant boost to both physical and magic defense. I don't know if you can hunt the balls to get another one, but 4 across my party would be mighty nice. Anyway, that's enough screwing around, let's get back to the story. Cast aside these meandering shackles and make some actual narrative progress. Our scientist guy has been kidnapped by pirates, so now we gotta go to Pirate Island, back to the cluster we just came from to rescue him. The tower's pretty small and has a 4-tile door puzzle. I'm not sure if you can fail this, but I guessed it immediately, so it doesn't matter. Atop the tower lies our napping victim, as well as 2 pirates who try to give us the old hurdy-persquirty. One's a little soy boy genie looking dude, while the other's a buff, bearded, armored pirate, who I want to swap out for Lufia. The little dude heals the fat guy and also buffs him, so our goal is to cap him first, and these guys come rocking the most annoying arsenal of techniques thus far. They use items, which is just horrible. It sounds like a recipe for failure. Anyway, their items don't do much, but they do significantly more to Lufia and Jaren, those of the low defense. But they also use status ailments such as paralysis and sleep, which are real bad. Their success rate is stupidly high, I can barely get a turn off. The little guy does take a lot of damage from big arrows though, so when I can actually get a hit in, my progress is pretty good, and he uses none of the buffs or healing on himself. So all I gotta do is keep the damage steady and stay alive. After about 1,000 health dealt, he starts using high potions on himself, healing for around 100. With all the ailments and interruptions to my turns, it's looking pretty bad, though it does mean he's likely close to death. Another attempt, I come back, inflamed, practically frothing, and start spamming big arrows like I've never spammed them before, at the cost of my own health, without reservation. I nailed that twinky little pirate so hard, it took him back to his rave days. Unfortunately, this came at the cost of Lufia and Jaren, but with a few well-timed and lucky turns, we revived them and wind flute our way back to good standing. From here, it's a slow but steady slog of using 3 big arrows per turn and riding the wind flute to victory. Now that the little lad is down, there's not a lot to this fight barring horrible luck, but I'm a pretty lucky guy. After all, you're still here. At one point, he starts confusing my characters, and 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 attacks Lufia. I know, she's horrible, but just try to contain yourself, please. I can't account for confusion, or I think the run would probably end here, so I'm gonna say that in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking thousands of health, 9 is nothing, and I'll do my best to stop them whacking dudes. As he's getting on, he starts casting Storm, which hits everyone for a swell chunk, and we now require 2 casts of the wind flute for safety. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 died at one point, but we got lucky and again swished him back up. Then Jaren drops back down, but the foe dies in kind. A win's a win, even if we lost some experience. Then we save the papa and his boy and head back to the lab with the material to fix up our submarine. The world opens up further with whirlpools we can submerge ourselves in, and we're directed to the Ring Island to find the Jewel Blade. Testing the submarine function at Ring Island, we're shuffled through a slow submerged section, then navigate a maze of sorts with auto-move panels and a few scattered chests, finally arriving at the sunken Fortress of Evil. This is a straight shot to where Maxim and his buds fought their final battle against the Sinistrals, and standing atop the ultimate battle site, we encounter them again. That's right, all 4 are back, as it's revealed that Lufia is the female one. That spoiler alert, I guess. What did you think, you were gonna watch a full fucking item run of a game and not get spoiled? What are you, retarded? She reawakened 16 years ago as a child with no memory or something and effectively facilitated their revival, and with her memory unlocked by a magic spell, we're probably gonna have to kill her. But hey, we got the Jewel Blade, that's gonna help a lot. Then we're warped back and told by the science man that we need to get some oil because Doom Island is now airborne, so we're off to the oil mines, I guess. Grabbing a key from an NPC on the world map, which is a very strange sight. I can think of few JRPGs that have NPCs on the world map. In terms of like projecting where you need to go, this is very distinct. Good job. Anyway, we head underground and arise near the oil mine. Enemy's hero really starting to beat my ass, even with the wind flute. I can hazard a guess and say that I'm quite underleveled, and that because our damage output is lowered, we're seeing more of enemies than intended. They were likely given much stronger attacks to account for how fast they'd be dispatched, so greeting them for extended periods is a bad look. Bumbling through, we see a suspicious looking dragon guarding a chest, and I unfortunately don't think he's friendly. We start pilfering and engage him in battle, as whatever's in that chest must be mine. It is the rule of video game. He starts off by lowering our agility, which doesn't seem like that much of a problem, and then he uses a fire move that hits the whole party, but it doesn't do too much damage. Obviously Jaren's a sponge, but everyone else can handle it pretty well. Our big arrows are still doing anywhere from 50 to 80, and outside of his melee attacks clocking Jaren, I can't see this fight going south. About halfway through, he starts ramping up the fire damage, hitting everyone for slightly north of 100, so now we're on the back foot for healing. On a bad turn, I use the wind flute 3 times, and on a good turn, I can get away with using it once or twice as a precaution. But we walk a very fine line until he finally drops, something like 30 minutes later. Taking the oil to a new secret base, which I also stumbled upon in my prior adventure, our ship can now fly. We tell the scientist that all 4 of us will return. We assure him that we will not murder Lufia, despite how tempting it may be. There are no random encounters in the sky, thank the good lord. If I had to engage aerial enemies, I honestly might have quit. I also found a handful of dragon orbs on my adventure, so I head off to find the rest with the power of game facts. I grab the remainder and they scatter again, granting me 1 more might shield for Jaren. This grants her 30 more defense and magic resist, which is a solid 20 to 30% increase, so, that should help a little bit. Then we head to a town just outside of what I'm thinking is the final dungeon, and there's some better armor, but I'm not super liquid, so I'll push on, and if I'm desperate, I'll come back for an extra couple points of defense. Entering the cave, I get smoked by regular foes. I think I'm gonna need that defense. My damage output is simply not there for how hard these guys hit, but before I succumb to their fist, I notice they're susceptible to insta-death, and I happen to have a few gloom arrows which do just that, but they're hardly reliable enough to rely on. I find the black ring, which gives 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 much better magic resist, and then give Lufia a defense up ring, which puts everyone's resistances pretty close across the board. Their natural deficits shine through, but the rings almost make up for it. Pushing through 2 caves, grabbing a key for one in the other, we arrive at the tower. What lies beyond? Pain? Suffering? Another dungeon? It's another dungeon. I'll spare you the details. We skim to the top and find a boss, who is deceptive at first. He starts casting low-level spells that hit everyone for like 20 to 30 damage tops, so we're cruising. You know, even if our big arrows occasionally roll single digits and a good roll is like 20. But then comes Mace. If this move connects, it's instant death, and I haven't addressed how sparse revival items are as I haven't really needed them thus far. But as far as I know, you can't buy them anywhere, and I've only got about 10 left. Couple that with about 30 miracles, which are items that revive to full health, and we have a hard limit on how many times we can cop a face mace. We've got to be really careful going forward, as I'm sure this isn't the last foe who will give us instant downs. We're chugging along. He has a move called Bolt, which can hit a single target for 50 or so, but really, his damaging attacks are pathetic thus far. It's that mace we got to worry about. At a certain HP threshold, I wasn't counting, but I'm going to say 1500 or so, he starts blasting with stronger magics, which slow down the damage output. Now we're cooking 1 wind flute and 3 big arrows per turn, dealing like 40-ish damage, like all up, not each. Progressing a ways, and he's ramped it up again, doing even stronger spells, which hit for about 100 a pop, which is 2 wind flutes and 2 big arrows per turn. But that is far from the worst of it. This evil man now casts an instant death spell on everyone. Yup, shit just got real. No amount of grinding can save me from this, it's all down to RNG now. I keep losing dudes left and right, and an hour and 10 minutes in, he finally gives, and with many close calls along the way. Unfortunately, he drops no gold, so now I'm down the cost of this battle, which was a significant amount. That's okay, Lufia steals the Jewel Blade and disappears with Doom Island, so now we 3 remaining boys must seek it out. I deposit the last of my balls for the final Might Shield, and the dragon dies on the way back to his home planet, and then I do a micro stock up. I scrounge what I can and track down the Island of Doom. Heading to the top, there are a few new enemies here, but I don't stick around to fight them. I'm heading straight for victory. Pilfering the place, I hit the top, and there they are. With only 3 members in my party, I start the fight, and 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻𝓮𝓭 is already kicking my ass. He buffs big and whacks hard. I might have to take a grind break to buy more big arrows, which do about 20 damage. This is gonna suck without a 4th member. I grind up about 10 levels, gear everyone up with the best armor money can buy, and head back to 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 only to get rearranged again. We, might be cooked, boys. My strategy is to forego the wind flute, as 50 damage a turn isn't enough when he's hitting 200 to 400 after a full buff. Effectively, I need to use an X potion, which restores full health after each attack, and Jaren can't even take one, so she's in desperate need of a tiny bit more defense. With no way to do more damage and getting absolutely rocked by a dude I can barely scrape for 30 damage a hit, I think the run might be over, unfortunately. Everyone has a Might Shield, the best shield in the game, and 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 has a Might Helm I found in some tower, but I can still acquire the Might Armor, which might help me. The issue is it's locked behind a 0.7% drop rate on enemies who have similar defenses to the final bosses, just without the insane damage output and longevity. Do I really think a couple stat points of defense is going to win me the game? Not really, but I want that armor, it's in my sights, and I'm coming for it. I'll see you all in 30 hours. To make my life easier, there's an item called Foul Water, which allows me to get an encounter every step, which honestly isn't even that much higher than the base encounter rate, but I don't have any. I used them all grinding. However, I found that you can mimic them with what I think might be a glitch. If you equip Jaren with the Monster Ring and use a Sweet Water, an item which is usually used to repel battles, you get a guaranteed encounter every step. Unfortunately, I sold the Monster Ring years ago, but in Lufia you can repurchase your previously sold items in a late game town, which might be one of the best features I've ever seen in a JRPG. Heading to the Pirate Tower, the best spot I found to fight these armor guys. I spend quite a while here, but I'm hemorrhaging gold as it costs like 2,000 to 3,000 depending on damage rolls to kill them, and they do not pay that much. They're susceptible to paralysis, but it doesn't seem they can be instantly killed, so we're kinda out of luck as there are no other items which deal as much damage as X arrows, and they cost 250 gold each. Granted, I was absolutely loaded. Money isn't really an issue, but I want to keep a big stack for all the X potions I'll need for the final bosses, and they cost like 3,000 gold a pop. Killing enemies that weren't the armor amid my grind helped my cash grow significantly. I gain about 1,000 gold from the battle, only spend 500, and all the items dropped by those foes were sold to make hundreds of thousands of gold. After about 12 hours of grinding, I grab enough X potions to feel confident with my healing, a whole inventory full of big and X arrows, and the Might Armor finally dropped from these bastards. It's time, boys. Let's go deface some sentinels. What are they called? Sinistrals. I'm also well into the 60s level-wise. I would say I'm significantly over-leveled, so fingers crossed I can survive 2 hits. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓮 is up first, the physical attacker, my former wall, and the battle starts fairly tame until he goes into a buffing frenzy and starts dishing 300 to 400 damage. But honestly, we're good, we're cruising. Our new health values are allowing us to tank and follow up with X potions, restoring us to full. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮𝓮𝓭 goes down once or twice when I get a little bit cocky, but overall the fight's steady. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 only has 3 moves, a regular attack, destroy, which seems to be a critical hit, and his physical buff. As we reach about 2000 damage dealt, 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻 stops using buffs and only uses the 2 damaging moves, which is great as it drops their damage way south of 400. From here, it's a straight shot to the end until he finally falls after about 30 minutes of chucking arrows. We're given freedom of movement here, so I head back, save, and then return, and up next is 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓻. This dude starts with magic that hits the whole party, but only deals about 60 damage, which is negated with a wind flute cast. He also lowers our defense, but casting Sunder and Flood, they don't use defense, so that's ostensibly useless. I dealt about 1500 damage, then Ammon switches to using 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮𝓮 and Chaos. I think that's supposed to be melancholy, and I have no idea what it does other than signify that chaos is coming, which confuses my entire party and has an extreme hit rate. While my guys mostly attack themselves, they also attack Ammon as well. Sure, it's only 15 damage here, 20 damage there, but I'm still not happy. To my knowledge, there's no way to prevent confusion, I just have to cop it and hope my guys don't deal too much damage to him. The manual does mention that a high intelligence staves off confusion, but given that Jaren seemed to cop it the most, it almost seems like the opposite is true. Anyway, as long as I don't physically attack him by choice and do my best to avoid it, that's the best we're gonna get, I'm afraid. I cop a lot of strings, with all 3 party members in a deep state of confusion, which sees the golden boy take a lot of physical damage. Between managing confusion, my characters attacking the foe, themselves having lower defense and also copping some low-level spells, there's a lot to account for here, and some of it is entirely out of my control. Ammon finally falls, with items being responsible for about 3500 health to my count, but my characters did just shy of 500 with confused melee.
Can't do anything, I was pressing buttons.
In hindsight, I probably could have used 5 high potions on him as a peace offering, but none of that matters anyway, as the run definitively died on the next boss. I'm given a little bit of leniency, so I head back to buy more big arrows, don't want to run out. I also realised that inns let you stay for free if you're poor. I have 49 gold and this inn charges 150. The dude lets me stay and I still have 49 gold. That's sick, thank you. Returning to the tower, we're set to face what seems like the final challenge. And in a way, we're correct. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓯𝓮𝓻. He starts with single target magic, a glancing blow, and follows with a defense debuff as well as Flood. Is this the same battle as last time? Did they just copy paste a boss? He does surprise us with paralysis, which is unfortunate as I don't have many paralysis cures. The following turn, all 3 party members get paralyzed and it's just turn after turn with this guy. I can't do anything. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 and Jaren fall, but 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 just edges out his own survival. I get everyone back, fully healed, and 3 turns later he does it again. I'm only like 250 damage in at this point, and as I'm getting everyone unparalyzed again, he heals himself for 90 damage. I somehow keep my shit together, rarely seeing all 3 party members paralyzed at once, and I amass around 1400 damage. However, then I run out of cures for my ailments, and it all goes to shit from there. I start dropping characters left and right, he's mass healing himself, so I call it after 36 minutes. Damn. Despite how annoying it was, I was still making decent progress, it was just extremely slow. I think to win, I'm gonna need more X potions and more paralysis cures, so we go and get those, and then we come back. Our next attempt starts strong, dealing 1000 damage in a short period with minimal heals and dodging most of his ailments. Unfortunately, we sit around 1200 damage for about 10 minutes and give up after a very long string of healing and heavy paralysis, which sapped most of my X potions. After a few more tries, I'm sick of begging RNG to go in my favour. The most damage I've done to him is 1800, and based on the other 2 guys having about 4000, I'm not even close. I assess my equipment, and 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮 and Jaren have 2 heavy armors, which don't increase magic resist at all, only defense, but this guy doesn't do physical attacks. So I strip them, dropping their equip weight by around 100. 𝓹𝓲𝓵𝓮𝓮's major problem is that he seems to outspeed me just slightly, which means catching up is never easy, and the second we start to lose control, it completely slips away. With this lowered weight, we might move a little bit faster. It does make a noticeable difference, but the battle's still lasting too long for how much healing I can do, as I need to prioritize damage to counteract the healing. If I had more X potions and a few more big arrows, I could absolutely stick it out for hours, so I guess that's what we're doing. Gotta go buy my monster and engage rings back. You know, the old walk of shame. I return with a few extra levels under my belt, almost 1500 big arrows, and a little north of 100 X potions, and I'm gonna facefuck this dude until my teeth crumble to dust. And then a couple tries later, and I just don't think it's possible. You start strong, and then he'll paralyze everyone and go on a mass heal spree, completely undoing 30 turns in an instant. I try one more time, just to be sure, and I am on a god tier run. I'm speeding through this dude like the average YouTube career. I'm dodging paralysis, he's not healing, and I'm hitting big damage rolls, strings of high 20s. I surpass 2000 damage very quickly, relatively speaking. Over the next several turns, I get back-to-back stun locked, and he heals about 500 health while I'm attempting to catch back up. It only gets worse from here, and we never see 2000 damage again. The damage dealt rapidly retreats back to 3 digits, and the run is dead. It seems that the lower his health becomes, the harder he spams this healing ability, which I confirmed when I slapped weapons on my boys and started hitting 300 per turn. The closer he got to death, almost every single one of his turns was spent healing, so even with a sustained favourable RNG, it is likely impossible. Honestly, this was a pretty cool run. I learned a lot about a game I'd never played before. It seems like they went out of their way to make items really viable right until like the last few bosses, and I appreciate that. Having the enemies use items too was really caught me off guard. I genuinely like this game. I like it so much in fact that I went back with proper equipment and killed the bosses in the traditional way just so I could see the ending. And it was a nice conclusion. I'm not going to show it here, you'll have to play it for yourselves. Or look it up on YouTube, I know you totally care. Now, go be productive, go throw items at real life people and see what kind of effect that has. Bye!